Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart and episode 7 of The Old Worlders, where I'm joined by my co-host Mark and we talk about FAQs and how often is too often.
Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Counter-Attack Bases. They stock a wide range of counters, gaming aids and movement trays for multiple game systems and offer custom items to suit your club, your event or even your podcast or YouTube channel. Check out the link in the video description.
We are back again talking about the FAQ, but in a slightly different way in our usual style, trying to answer a question. So Mark, how are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, thanks, Stu. How have you been?
Hot, and this time without the fan on, which we've just had to restart. My office has been a little bit hot recently, but yeah, that's three-story house. That's what happens in the UK with no aircon. But anyway, moving along. So we're going to be talking about the FAQ today. We're going to be talking about some of the big key points that we believe are the big key points. Mark's been doing lots of work behind the scenes, looking at the FAQ and drilling down into it and chatting to lots of people. And this is where Mark's connections with Team England and competitive Warhammer, while also being a really casual wargamer himself, really helps because he's seeing from different sides of perspective here, more than I can bring to it. So that's really interesting. But we're not just going to do the line by line review. We're going to try to answer our question about how often is too often for FAQs. And talk a little bit, are they good changes? You know, are they enough overall? And you know, how much tinkering can we get away with this edition now? All these questions come up every time you have an FAQ. I was on Facebook this morning on one of the two big groups, the Ergo Fargo group, and someone shared a picture of, you may have seen this or not, but someone shared a picture of a sign in a toilet that says, only flush paper down this toilet.
Yeah.
And what they mean is obviously don't flush anything other than regular toilet paper. But then of course the implication was how we all interpret rules and changes. And then there's loads of jokes. Obviously, what do you do with the solids then? Do you push them down the sink? Do you know, all those other things? And it was just a really brilliant way of illustrating how we react to rules as written and intended, and argue about FAQs, and maybe we take things a little bit too far when the implication or it's pretty obvious in the first place. So I think we need to roll straight into it, really, Mark. We're going to cover some big changes. 6 main points, I think, Mark, is what you sort of drilled it down to in the end, and I have to agree that they seem to be the ones that stand out most. Some of the points cover more than one layer FAQ or errata, but let's start with the sort of the first big one. Mark, talk us through how inventory have fared for this FAQ.
Well, this has been a really interesting FAQ for infantry. There's obviously been a problem for a little while where you get into this sort of like standoff where you've got some elite heavy infantry who's looking at some not so good infantry, but you don't want to charge them because you're going to lose your impetus when you attack. Then they're going to get all their attacks back against you, and it can then turn it into a bit of a stalemate and a loggerhead. So what Games Workshop have decided is that some heavy infantry or elite infantry units have been given Furious Charge, and what Furious Charge is when you charge you get +1 attack. Which is brilliant because it means your front rank is now getting the extra attacks, which means that you're maybe not going to lose as much impetus on the charge, so you don't get into this horrible stalemate of I'm not charging you, you're not charging me, and then hovering over objectives and things like that in the middle of the battlefield. It does actually mean that, given the right circumstances, that somebody can actually charge the other unit. So it's a really positive change. I think they've associated that there's a problem there, and giving that to some units has been brilliant. There are some units that have not been given it, that have raised the odd eyebrow here and there, such as Swordmasters, for example, haven't been given it. But I think White Lions have already got it. So what they didn't want to do was give too many units in the same army the same bonus. Basically they wanted it to level out across the playing field, as it were, which I think is completely understandable. And it just means that infantry, is more likely to charge now, which is good,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
fantastic. That's what we want. Other notable exceptions, I think Fusion Guard don't get it, and I don't think Tomb Guard do either, from what I can remember. So there's some notable exceptions there, but nothing too major. So yeah, really, really positive change, I think, overall on that one for the infantry.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's something that was discussed as a potential resolution for this or an idea earlier on, but it was definitely something when I read it, I thought, oh, that's quite a neat idea that we'll circle back to this a little bit, but there's been a lot of changes in this edition. That's why we have a 1.5 now, or 1.5.3. And the tinkering means that there's always a knock-on effect. And I think that that's happened with some of the changes to infantry. This is why this has been brought in. We don't maybe yet know if there's going to be other knock-on effects. Some of the units you've mentioned that maybe could also benefit from it, should also benefit from it as well. We might see more added as well in future FAQs or right, or where someone else. In fact, I'm pretty sure we will. We may even see someone, certain units have it reduced. And it's tricky because there'll be the lore arguments around it. And then there's also the in-game play and balance arguments for it. And they're not always perfect. Sometimes the lore of a unit over time is changed slightly, or sometimes they have to also fulfill a certain role within the balance of that army list. And there's always funky little bits, and we have to sometimes remember we have to have some abstractions in the game in order to make it work. So yeah, I think it's not perfect, but it's really nice to see that there's a genuine chance to try and make some units a little bit better. I mean, I saw an argument. I mean, I'm an Empire player, so I saw some arguments about that. Great swords shouldn't have it. That's not what they do. They're stoic and they kind of come in at the flank. But I thought, you know what? Also, is it really that far hard a stretch to think of guys with massive two-handed swords wouldn't be charging, because historically that's exactly what they would be doing with them as well. So it didn't worry me too much there. There may be lore, though, maybe other better examples of where lore doesn't quite fit it. Who knows? I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes, and maybe a couple of those own units, especially like the Tujikan Guard, because maybe lore-wise that does feel like they should have it. So maybe that's a missed one. Maybe it's just that, again, like I said, that balance within the wider context. I don't know. We don't get to ask the designers questions around these things. Unfortunately, we don't have Warhammer Fests. We don't have open days anymore. We can't corner them and say, hey, what was the reason for this? Because there may well be a very simple reason of we didn't do it because of X or Y. Unfortunately, we're left guessing and talking about it, and it is what it is. Next point, then, cannons. So give us a rundown on what's happened with cannons.
Cannons have been in a tricky spot for ages because of the varying comps that have allowed people to not necessarily need line of sight to shoot things. That's what has been occurring is what I refer to, for anybody who's as old as I am, as the John the Virgo trick shot cannon, which basically enables you to bounce your cannon off of things to hit something that you couldn't see, or is behind another unit and you couldn't hit. What Games Workshop have done is they've basically said that when you fire your cannon, if you are firing at a monster, its base doesn't count as terrain. So you can just fire, and when it hits the monster's base, it doesn't bounce. It will just hit the monster. So that will effectively just auto hit it. Every other unit is pretty much the same, but you don't necessarily need line of sight to hit things, which is odd. I can understand why they've laid it out in that way. I think that it's one of those things where there's potentially two different sides to look at it. If you're playing a friendly game with your friends, it feels a bit weird. If you're playing a competitive game, it still feels a bit weird, but maybe not as much because everybody's playing with the same tool set.
Mm.
So I'm not sure how I feel about it. I think that they've taken a problem and semi-answered it by doing what they've done, but the way that they have answered it has then, in effect, caused another problem.
Yes.
So I think that there needs to be a bit of clarity about it. Um, what I would simply suggest to people is I would imagine within the next week, somebody's going to come out and say, this is how we're going to adopt cannons being used. And people will either say, yep, that's good enough for us and follow suit and adopt that, or come up with their own ruling. So for now, I'd just say keep playing with it. If you're not playing it at tournaments or anything, just keep playing with it how you were, how it suits your little gaming group, and just be patient and wait for sort of like a bit of an endorsement from one of the committees saying, "Oh, we think this is how
Yeah.
it's going to work, and it'll probably sort it out."
Yeah,
It's
there will be a most popular idea probably that will spread
yeah,
its
I
way
think
around,
so.
or a slight common sense adjustment too, because they've clearly tried to stop people bouncing cannonballs over things that they shouldn't, using the rules in a funky way, which is good. See, I would never want to go back to this because I see the drawbacks to it. I used to enjoy guessing and fully guessing ranges on cannonballs and things. It was good fun, but we know that people can get good at, if you're good at measuring, that shouldn't make you good at a game or something like that. And so
No,
I don't want to necessarily go back to that, but it does feel like we've managed, like you said, managed to overcomplicate something. Essentially, we don't want people bouncing cannonballs over hills and over walls or any of those kind of weird effects over buildings. But also, I don't think there's anything wrong with shooting a cannonball and overshooting something. But once you've
no.
landed it, that bounce, if it takes you into it, you hit, and if it takes you over, for me, it should be really, really simple. It kind of blows my mind that we've got to a point where that's not the case, and it might just mean you just need to try not to be so wordy sometimes with the resolutions with things, and just be a little bit more straightforward, and make a distinction between targeting units of any kind in the game and targeting when there's terrain there, and treating them in a different way. Maybe that's the way to go around it, but hopefully the common sense version will come back where you can
Yeah.
you don't auto hit. They basically just need to solve the not auto hitting monsters thing, and I'm sure they can do that.
The most simple explanation is probably going to be the best one here,
Yeah,
because we've had 2 or 3 goes at it now. People are still not agreeing in how it can be used.
yeah,
So I think that really just for the sake of the game, I mean, I don't understand why we're still not using them how they were used in 6th edition, if I'm honest. It's
mm,
like, I'm firing, I'm rolling my dice. Has the cannon misfired? No. Right. I'm rolling my dice. Right. Has it stuck in the mud? No. Right. Has the bounce caused it to hit anything? No. Oh, yeah, it's gone through these models. Right. Those models have been hit.
yeah.
It's,
That's. I think that's the way my
and if
brain's always worked with it as
if there's
well.
any terrain in the way, then the cannonball hits the terrain
Yeah,
and then stops.
yeah.
It's,
Yeah, that's the way my brain still works for it. I've got this weird sort of amalgamation of many different versions of Warhammer. If you said to me, how does a cannon work? And I didn't have a rule book with me, that's probably the default that my brain would work to. And maybe the game needs to just get back to that, because I can't see any reason why that version of the canon rules can't work in Warhammer the Old World. If there is, put it in the comments below.
yeah,
I
let
would
us
be
know,
interested.
please.
But it
It
feels
might
like
just
that
be that
simplified version of the game would kind of rules just seem to work. But maybe my simple, slightly smooth brain when it comes to rules is missing something important.
yeah, it might just be that, we're both old and we've amalgamated sets of rules from
Mm,
everywhere, and in actual fact, they're all wrong. So yeah, put your views down in the comments, and then we'll look and see where we are. But yeah, it feels overly complicated for the sake of being overly complicated. We've had 2 or 3 goes at it now. Let's just simplify it, get it right, job done, move on.
Anyway, let's move on. Regen. This is a biggie, and I'll let you try to explain the confusion. I've got so confused with this, with all the little adjustments to it. Over Old World as it's already been. So I imagine that there's a lot of casual players out there that are just like, what it's going on with regen. I've also never really played armies personally that I've had
Yeah.
armies of regen. So I'm not quite as, it's not as natural to me as a user of those armies either. Over many editions, it's always my opponents that are the people that have had regen in their armies. So take it away.
So regeneration has always been a fairly simple mechanic um, until now. The way regeneration now looks to work is if you have a creature that has 3 wounds and there's 3 wounds left and gets hit 7 times, then you can only roll the number of regeneration rolls equal to the amount of wounds it has. So
Right.
effectively, you go from a position where you would normally roll 7 dice and take it from there, but now you're going to roll them one at a time, basically.
Hmm.
Some people are arguing what that actually means is because you can't have more regens and you've actually got wounds, that you would discard the extra 4 dice so that you would just be rolling 3 regenerations for the 3 wounds that you've got. This
Hmm.
is where the confusion has come in, because some people are arguing, oh yeah, well, you discard the other dice. Other people are saying, well, you just roll one at a time, surely, and then you work your way through. Um, and for anybody who's stuck on this, I had to read this about 10 or 15 times, and I'm in honesty, in the end, I went to the main Discord to see if there was an explanation on there, because it was still, I thought I had it down. I was like, that's how it works. And then I was like, that isn't how it works. So I'm just going to read out the explanation quickly from the old world Discord. The question is, can a model make more regeneration saves than it has wounds remaining on its profile? And the answer is no. When a model makes regeneration saves, it makes one save for each wound lost. Now, the Discord is saying, while they can't claim to be experts in rule adjudication, their recommendation on how to handle this while creating the least corner cases or odd interactions is as follows. Rolling several saves or regeneration rolls at once is fast rolling. As explained in the rulebook, fast rolling is an option to speed gameplay up by rolling batches of dice at once. However, if circumstances dictate that rolling several dice at once can change the end outcome, then you must roll them separately. With this in mind, if fast rolling regeneration saves would change the end result compared to slow rolling, then you're doing something wrong. So that is quite
Hmm.
clear in how they're
Yeah.
viewing it. So the second point they make, based on the first point, is the correct way to roll regeneration saves is that for each unsaved wound allocated to a miniature, they will lose 1 regeneration save until they fail enough rolls to lose their last wound, or all of the rolls have been made.
Yeah.
So again, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
example that they give is a character with 2 wounds remaining takes 3 hits from a multiple wounds weapon. Said hits deal 3, 2, and 2 wounds respectively. As such, the character rolls 2 regeneration rolls. The character saves one and fails one. It then rolls an additional roll for the third unresolved wound of the first hit, which it passes. And so the first hit is fully accounted for. Then you roll another regeneration roll for the first wound of the second hit and fails. Now, in total, it has suffered 2 wounds, regenerated another 2, and dies. This will grant 4 combat resolutions because you've done the 2 wounds to it and it has saved 2 regeneration rolls.
Hmm.
Now, if the character was involved in a challenge, it then also could grant 3 extra points of overkill for the remaining wounds up to the total allowed. That's where it gets
Right.
a bit wordy. It's a little
Yeah.
bit difficult to understand. So basically, what I would suggest is when it comes to regeneration, look at the number of wounds you've got. Look at the number of wounds that have got to be saved. Just roll them one at a time. And
Yeah.
keep a note of it. Was that one saved or not? No, yes, it was. But don't just discard the dice if it was saved, because you still need to keep that dice if it's a multi-wound creature
Hmm.
towards combat resolution.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you.
Now, I
I'm with you
hope
at the
that makes
moment.
it a little bit
I'd
easier
have
for
forgotten it
people.
by the
Yeah,
time I play the game next, and that's a lot of that's on me. But something I will say about this whole thing, and I might not be popular for saying this, is that we like a crunchy game with Warhammer, the old world. That's why we play this over other things. But there's also my challenge to people out there, even the most competitive gamer that likes a real crunch. What is the game really benefiting from having this much complication around just rolling a save? And is there a
Exactly.
design challenge there where the game doesn't become less tactically challenging, to find another way of doing this? Because that's clearly quite brain melty.
Mm.
I mean, the game's not just for new players. The game's not just because I know what the comments were often like. Well, go and play AOS or all the other stuff. I just generally mean, as a nice open conversation, if it's that hard to explain and it's so confusing alongside all the other different types of saves, and there's not an easy flow chart for it that people can go, oh, that makes sense. Is there something that's sort of stacked up over the years has gone wrong with the rules designed for it here? I don't know. Maybe not. It's a question. Get people thinking about, are there elements, are there interactions in this game that need to be that complicated? Yes, maybe. No, maybe. But if they are there, how much is the game benefiting from that, and the amount of time that we have to spend debating it, talking about it, working out how much it works, and then having FAQs and endless debates on those things? It makes you wonder. It's such a small part of of one interaction. It's about essentially around a saving throw. It's a form of saving throw that causes this much confusion. Then for me, there's something around the design of the whole rule that isn't really doing its job, as good design, as
Yeah.
good clean game design. But that's a different conversation entirely.
Yeah. I mean, what I would add to that is, and I'll say this, and this may make me unpopular as well, but if it's causing that much consternation, do we need it?
Mm.
Do we need it, or can we just have saving throws and walled saves? Because what this does do, this way of doing it like that, is unless I've got my head around it wrong, it would appear that it does make Chaos Dragons with regeneration quite powerful.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not saying that the rule's been done that way to sell lots of Chaos Dragon kits when they come out. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is do we need regeneration? Could it not just be simplified into a saving throw and a walled save? That would cover everything. Or do people feel that regeneration is part of Warhammer and needs to stay in it, for the sanctity of the game, really, as it's been one of the founding things. So again, let us know in the comments below.
Mm.
Be really interested to see what people think. Um, I think that not having triple saves on things is a really good idea.
But there's a little bit of me that goes along with what you've said, and supports maybe my own point of, is it overcomplicated, and do regens saves need to be a different kind of ward save that some units get instead of having wards?
Mm,
And the reason it's regen is because it was law. It was a law based thing originally, wasn't it? It wasn't just a
yeah,
case of just a slightly different way. I don't know if that works with the modern game. Who knows? But yeah, but it's probably a bigger conversation than the way we're trying to have here. So you are right. Let's move along.
move
So
on.
what are we up to? Up to point four of
Yes,
the sort of the six big things, and skirmishers.
hurrah,
Yes.
hurrah for skirmishers. So this has been ironed out fairly well, I think,
Hmm.
um, to the extent that some of the more problematic skirmishing flying units, such as Pegasus Knights and gyrocopters, now do have a 90-degree vision cone from
Yeah.
the front of them. Um, this doesn't mean that they're not still a flying skirmisher. It just means that they do not have a 360-degree line of sight, which means that they can't perform all sorts of weird banks and spin rolls into combat from things
Yes.
that are below them and behind them, as it were. Um, there are some noticeable cases that have not been affected by this. Um, Warhawks being one, which is interesting with the rest of the changes that have come in for the Wood Elves. So that could be an interesting way to look at things.
Hmm.
And I think that overall that is a really good change for the game because again they'd had 2 or 3 goes at trying to fix Pegasus Knights and they hadn't really got it right. And while this is probably going to involve people having to get little markers to show which way they're pointing and ensure that their models are glued and not able to be spun on the poles that they're
Yeah,
mounted
yeah, yeah.
just in case there's any sort of, I've knocked that and I can't remember which way it was facing shenanigans going on or anything like that. I'm
I
sure
didn't
that,
even consider that, but yeah,
yeah, I'm
that's
sure
you know, I can.
that wouldn't happen in any form of, Warhammer.
No,
Um,
humans aren't like that. You
no, definitely not. So yeah, overall, really good. Going to make it a lot easier for a lot of people to play the game and have fun. It is a massive nerf to
Hmm.
Bretonians without a shadow of a doubt, and it to the point where it could even see no more Peg Knights at competitive play.
Hmm. Which would be a
Um,
shame,
yeah, which would be the
but
same because they are an iconic unit. Uh, I would say, with Dwarfs and Gyrocopters, but Dwarfs continually get hit with the wrong end of the naughty
yeah.
stick for no reason whatsoever. So,
I'd argue the
Richie's got
reason
no
is
air
the
left.
wider game, and that sometimes the changes then affect wars in a different way because of the makeup of their roster. I suppose it's very
Possibly.
hard to sort of. They're not being singled out as such, but they're just being caught in wider changes. It feels like that happens. So there's a wider improvement game wide on something that ends up hurting dwarves because that's something that they benefit from to make up for other areas. I think. Especially about the flying skirmishes, I agree. I think it's almost such a simple change that makes you wonder why that this wasn't done beforehand.
Mm.
And I think it's really good in terms of Brett's and Flying Pegasus. And this will come back with other points later on. It often makes me wonder about, we've got to question ourselves about what does Warhammer look like? What do we want to play a game of Warhammer? Do we want units on the table? And they've been trying to make this game more and more rank and flank throughout its whole inception. The original rules tried to make it that way, and there were glaring errors in it, which meant that you didn't get many infantry at all.
Yep.
And then we saw domination of all these skirmishing flying units as well. And I don't think Pegasus Knights were ever meant to be anything more than what they were in sixth edition. They are annoying units that will harass flanks and maybe take out war machines. That's kind of what they were originally designed to do. And in many regards, so are gyrocopters. They're not supposed to. You can design really cool themey Air Force armies if you want to, but that was always supposed to be the out of whack thing rather than becoming the most standard competitive build. And if that becomes the most standard competitive build, then there's a wider design problem. So the fact that they aren't as strong now, it feels like the game's returning more to the kind of the design, the plan of the way the game was supposed to work. They're not supposed to be the dominant force. They're supposed to be a supporting unit. The law of Bretonia isn't flying armies of Pegasus. They are a supporting unit that would harry flanks, etc.
Yeah.
And the same with the gyrocopters. They should be harrying flanks and steam cannoning stuff and shooting stuff. That's what dwarves do. That's still good because you can position them any way you want to get your angle to fire. What they shouldn't be able to do is tie up whole armies by literally zooming around and catching flank of one unit and then zooming and catching the flank of another unit, stopping that unit from moving, charging, supporting another charge. They were too good. And when I've played against them, the steam gun's dangerous for sure, but it was their ability to, once they get into your flanks, and if you've got an army that doesn't have fast moving stuff, you've got lots of blocks of infantry, there's very little you can do because they're too quick for you to do anything. Whereas they're more designed, if they're on a path, a flight path, so to speak, it makes far more sense that at least well, I've got to deal with them coming in from this way. It's going to take them a lot longer to bang a turn. And that's the way things fly. That's the way it works.
Yeah.
And if you imagine your game of Warhammer sped up to real life, it's only a few minutes in real time. So the amount of maneuverability those units were doing was far quicker this is a weird abstract concept here, but it's far quicker in time sped up than what the infantry units were doing. If you
Yeah,
think it, does that make sense to you? I don't know if
makes
it makes
perfect
sense to
sense.
anyone watching this, but if you imagine pressing play and seeing your battle move,
Mm.
the sheer amount of maneuverability that these flying units had almost meant that they were playing the game in speed up mode, in fast forward, while the rest of the
Yeah,
army was moving. The rest of the game was moving at a slower pace.
78
So
and 33, right? It's
exactly, because units can turn, as humans would turn towards an attacking monster or something like that. But it was,
yeah,
so I think this is a good change. I think it does that well. Yes, it will hurt some people's armies to start a play, but I can't see anything other than being a good thing overall. Have you got any thoughts on how this affects? There's some other stuff around skirmishes as well, isn't it, in terms of line of sight blocking,
yeah.
and
It's
how that works.
yeah. So people, let me just go back to that. What we were just talking about first before I go into the next
Mm,
bit. I think the issue is with it, and this is the overriding issue with, is that one unit of three gyrocopters or three gyrocopters or three Pegasus Knights isn't a problem. It's when you've got nine Pegasus Knights and nine gyrocopters that it becomes a
mm,
problem. And then when that trickles down, somebody sees that does well at a tournament, and then they take that army and then take it to their local club and then become that guy that nobody wants to play because they've obviously, they've turned up to a knife fight with a General Electric's minigun. Um, that, that's where the problems start to show and the cracks start to appear. So yeah, it's that taking of units to the maximum level that you can take them because they are slightly overpowered within their niche. So obviously with Dwarfs gyrocopters maneuverability, rest of the army's got no maneuverability, so therefore good. Peg Knights are just really good because they've been turned into these flying like Valkyries of the sky that throw lightning and everything when really they were always just used to sort of like go around the back of armies and hit siege engines and
mm.
wagon trains and units of peasants and whatever. So they weren't ever
Yeah,
designed to be a full frontal. Rah, here we go. So
yeah,
I think that's where the problem is for those. But that being said, there are other changes with skirmishers. The biggest change is that there was an argument for a long time that people said that if you're in skirmish formation, can you arrange your troops so that the skirmishers in front of other models within that unit, same skirmishing unit, block line of sight, which to me is surely that's just crazy. I mean, you've got a unit of skirmishers, they're in a skirmish formation. Just because you can move them so that they're behind each other doesn't mean that they should block line of sight to each other and things like that.
mm,
So, and now that doesn't happen, which is good. So
yeah.
everything is fine and dandy and operating as should be for the most part.
Moving on to a really fun one, low linear obstacles, and I might be being sarcastic there. Low linear obstacles, hit us with it.
So yeah, it's been an issue for a while. There were lots of people that said because of the way that it was written, it applied in different ways. Whereas I think it's always been, in my mind, it's been clear how I think it should be played. But obviously, other people have got very different ideas on it. There's been a whole load of comp about it. There's been a lot of general crying and browbeating on the internet about and cries out for dwarfs should be nerfed because of this and everything. It's sort of like the dwarfs have been nerfed so much. They've been hit with every single stick of the naughty type that you can think of. They have
Mm,
one thing left, which was, being able to entrench and
yeah,
and get behind low linear obstacles and people were trying to take that away from them. It's just crazy. It's not difficult. It's a wall. Go
yeah,
round the other side of the wall. If you hit them in the flank, you haven't got to fight over the wall because
yeah.
they're not quick enough to be able to move to get into a position where they can defend themselves. So just go round them.
Yeah.
It's not a tricky thing to do. Um, so the question is that has been posed, that has been answered. If two units are engaged across a low linear obstacle, are they limited to making just a single attack because they aren't in base combat? And this is
Mm.
where the problems were, only single attacks being allowed to be made. And the answer is no. Whilst the charging unit will become disordered, and whilst impact hits and stomp attacks cannot be made due to the presence of obstacle, so
Yeah.
you still won't get your stomps or your impact hits, units are otherwise able to fight normally across a low linear obstacle as if they were in base combat.
Yeah.
So that irons everything out. There's no more
Yeah.
of this, oh, well, I'm only going to get one attack because he's standing behind a wall. It isn't fair. And it's sort of like he's standing behind a wall. You're standing 10 foot away from him. You haven't got a spear or a pike.
Yeah.
Why would you ever be able to have any attack other than throw a rock at him? It's just it's
Yeah.
it's a bit crazy, but I'm glad they've ironed it out because there was a lot of comp having to be written around this. And one of the
Yeah.
first questions that people are always asking were, what's the comp on LLOs for this event?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Followed by cannons, followed by skirmishers, generally,
Yeah.
then followed by any one of the types of undead, but we don't need to get into that. So low linear obstacles has been solved now, very
Mm.
definitively solved. Yeah,
I love
fantastic.
it. I
Yeah,
love it.
it's
For me, it's brilliant. It does what it allows dwarves to use that benefit,
yep.
but it also, more importantly, and I am a dwarf fan, but more importantly, it should be saying to us playing the game that get some bloody nice terrain on the table, make it look cool, make their little hamlet that you wanted to with a couple of walls there, and then
Yeah.
use the terrain in the way that you would in a real battle to your advantage, trying to get in a position where you could take advantage from the terrain. And it might not do you any good because you might place you at a wrong angle, you get charged from the flank or rear. That's the battle, that's the game. This is where the fun and the of the game should be, and about maneuvering your armies, setting them up in places where oh god, this is going to be a tough army, but if I can get into that bit of terrain, it's going to stop their stomps. That's good. That's what, for me, what wargaming should be about, not arguing about regen. And this
Yeah.
rule, for me, clears up really clearly, makes it look really good, and just, yeah, brilliant. Another example of, it seems really simple once it's worded in a way that everyone can go, oh yeah.
Yeah. Simpler explanation, best explanation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't need to be made more difficult than it was. But again, people looking to get an edge, understandably, because that's what you do at that level. Trickle down effect makes it difficult for everybody. No one's fault, just bad wording on the rules when written in the first place. So now it's all
Yeah.
been sorted out. Jobs are good on, move on. Everybody can stop crying.
Right. Number 6,
Last
points
one.
reductions.
Yeah. So this has been talked about a fair bit, but I'm not sure that anybody really expected it. And while the majority of the reductions they've made have been a case of, well, yeah, I can see why they've done that. The troops maybe weren't being represented as much as they wanted to be because they were slightly undercooked for their points, and there was always a better option. And why would you take units of, for example, Chaos Ogres when you can take Dragon Ogres? You
Yeah.
know, it's not going to happen. But now with the points adjustments, good, great for trolls, great for Chaos Ogres, good for majority of races, amazingly good for high elves, but I'm yet to see that it's going to be enough. I think high elves are in a real tricky place, and I think that they're going to need more than some point adjustments to make them,
Yeah.
half decent again. Although saying that, 70 points for an Eagle Claw is very tempting. It could be that just the reinforced points deductions enable you to have another couple of the things that are really, really good. I am just concerned that that leads us into the trap of this unit's really good, can only afford 2 of them. Oh, now can afford 4 of them. And
Yeah,
then we
well, of
go
course
back
it will.
into that
Of
downward
course it will.
spiral of, when one unit is too good, cafe ogres, cafe ogres with the cannons, for example, sorry, or the shugs or anything like that, or the balloons. When something is generally being taken in quantity, it's because it's too good.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I'm concerned about that. Um, but overall, I think it's going to be one of those things that it's going to take a few weeks of playing
Yeah.
with them to see what the extras you can wring from those changes really are,
Hmm.
and how that changes your forces. And I mean, it has a massive, massive, massive thing right across the board, um, especially for Battle March as well. Because obviously, if you're looking at troop costs going down, it
Yeah.
all of a sudden that maximum amount you can spend on a core unit, you're going to get more troops because
Hmm.
you can afford more within that limitation. So it's a very whenever they do a points reduction for troops, it is quite a wide outlook that they have to look at it. We don't know if they've got it right or not because we haven't tested it enough. Um,
God
t
no. Yeah.
time will tell. I think in the past week I've written about 40 to 45 lists.
Hmm.
Um, and I know people that have done a lot more, and I'm
Yeah.
talking like 3 or 4 times as many. So, um, yeah, it's going to be interesting. Overall, potentially positive. Could cause a couple of issues, but no doubt they'll be smoothed over. Um,
Hmm.
the issue that does fall within that one that I did like, which isn't necessarily a points reduction issue, but was a unit size increase.
Hmm.
Um, was Dragon Ogres going up to 2. So
Right.
no more wandering lone Shartax with blackened plates going
Okay.
around dealing hero type damage as a monster. So yeah, that could be interesting going forward.
Yeah, and I can understand why they may have done that because it's you don't want these pseudo cheap heroes that are kind of running around. You want people to pay the hero cost for that. If it's supposed to be a unit, it's supposed to be a unit. So I get it. Um, I appreciate that will upset a few people in terms of that's not what they had to build for their army, and there's always
Yeah.
going to be that. In terms of the points reductions, I think it's of course it's a positive overall. There's going to be a lot of argument, and I'm very open to it actually. That there's just some of the especially the inventory cost ones of a single reduction of a single point in places may well prove just not to be enough. And it probably just indicates they're just not ready to kind of go crazy with any changes right now. And these are part of a sort of a large field test towards what they might do in the future. And we'll
Yeah.
see if that makes a difference. And that might mean that we're all part of this field test that becomes that we don't see the returns on it until a new edition.
Mm.
Because I don't think some of the changes are going to make an a lot of difference. Sometimes it might mean you can squeeze one extra man in your army. This is not going to make any difference whatsoever. You basically purchasing another wound. It's really not going to make a huge difference. Things like the bolt throws for sure. The ogres you noted, that's interesting. I like that
Mm.
as well. So there's some really good ones. It's a right to step in the right direction. But the really important thing is there's been a lot of very hot takes on both sides of this.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm just interested just to sit back and see what it actually does over time because there's been a lot of reactions to things before the game's been played with those things. The interpretation has been wrong in the past. I can remember. I'll give you an example because it's a really good segue onto the next point. One of the examples was when the Empire Arcane Journal came out, and everyone said, "Null Army of Infamy is absolute. Why would anyone take this?" And then and people realised that they could turn it into a bit of a gun line after some future changes, and armies change depending on how the rules change, and we ended up with this mass outrider army, and I'm happy as an Empire player to see that be nerfed. So I've got a little list of some of my favourite changes, and that was one of them. And it's not to annoy people that had those armies. I'm sure they enjoy painting up their multiple units of Outriders, but that's clearly not what they had in mind when they designed that army list and when they designed that unit. Was that the Empire army, which is supposed to be halberdiers and cannons with a couple of periphery units of mounted troops with guns. That was the vision, the lore, the story, and it was turned into this sort of mass army of mobile gun wielding horsemen. That wasn't what they were trying to do, and this is a correction to that. And I'm glad that they, even though on its own it's not the most broken list build in the world, but also, is it fun to play against? Is that what the game of Warhammer is designed to be? Is this rank and flank? For some people, yes, it is. I would towards, no, that's probably not the kind of Warhammer that I'd want to play, and I like that change for that reason.
It's getting I think that the known army was getting almost dangerously close to 40k-ish in the amount of output that it had. The changes, it will very much change that army, whether or not it makes it no longer viable.
Probably
from a competitive level, yeah. But the thing is, at the end of the day, I know there's a lot of rogues in the Empire, but you know, in 2,000 points, sort of like 30 or 40 repeating gun outriders is a bit much. It's not representative of how the army should look. And I get that you don't have to play how the army should look. If there's a case for it and you can play it in a certain way and you want to play the game to push the boundaries because that's how you get the best results on variants and things like that, then I fully understand that you play multiples of those units. It's the same thing again, isn't it? When one unit is too good, it goes to multiples, and that's when the problem occurs. And in some ways, maybe the rule of three at the start of when everybody started playing, maybe that just wasn't that much of a bad thing.
I want to move on from this, but I think essentially these are SKU lists, and I remember a time when SKU lists were one person's fun theme army, and they didn't generally work because the rest of the meta didn't match up. So you go to a big event during 7th or 8th edition, like the South Coast GT or something, and there'll be someone with a funky army with a story behind it. But I think there's a problem in the rules design when the competitive way of playing Empire is that blueprint, and I think they've realized that, and it might mean that the Empire suddenly loses its ability and really drops down because it might not be another really strong competitive build. Maybe there are, but I think it's worth losing that for them to try and find other fixes, because Empire should be competitive with troops, with state troops. That's what it's all about, and I'd rather that they got to a point where they design a game that works with that rather than needing these SKUs. And I'm not getting at anyone who built and painted those armies and have a cool story for it. I get it, but it just, again, where the competitive thing that everyone's copying is just this weird bastardization of the image of what the game is supposed to be, and I think that's a problem. Excuse the phrase there, but and that again segues onto the next thing. I really like the max unit size thing. It's not going to get rid of Death Stars with loads of characters in there, but what that does stop people doing is taking 80 skeletons. As much as it looks really cool and works well at a competitive army, that again can't represent the game that they're trying to design. If you've got more than half of your unit, and that's the rule now, is you can't have more than half of it's a number of models, isn't it? Or point, I can't remember which round they did it, a number of models in one single unit. And I just think that is really, really, it's just a nice thing for the game. It's a quality change for the game to stop those kind of really
Yeah.
weird skews where people turn up with what, yes, a massive block of 80 skeletons looks amazing, but save that for a big 10,000 point game. That shouldn't be on the table at 2,000 points when you've got only room for another big block of 80 and
Well,
that's all you've got.
I think this is the issue. If it was, so what it does is it hurts all of the armies like dwarfs and everything with their Thunder Stars, where they just traditionally have one big unit. It doesn't really affect Tomb Kings
Yeah.
because they just have still have double blobbing. They're
Yeah.
still going to have two massive units if they want. It just means that they have to tinker around with the amount of models that are in them very, very
Yeah.
slightly, but
Yeah.
not a
Doesn't
huge
fully
amount.
solve the problem.
No. So I don't. It feels like they've looked at the problem,
Mm.
taken line of sight to it, taken their cannon rolls, fired it, missed the target,
And hit a large
hit,
monster.
and then rather than hitting a large monster, hit the dwarfs again.
Yeah,
Or
maybe.
another associated faction because I can understand what they're doing or what they
Mm.
think they're trying to do, and I understand it, and that is a decent attempt to change. But I think that they've got the targeting wrong, and that while it will affect armies that were very prone, almost like maybe Gore style units and things like that in Beastmen, where
Yeah.
you know it affect those, but it won't affect Tomb Kings.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Maybe
so
we need for the next edition. Maybe they need to seriously think about some max use on unit caps as well as the minimums. They've reduced the minimums so it works for Battle March, but maybe we need some maximum unit sizes for certain things because you can target things individually then, can't you?
I think if you go into that though, that you're pushing the game into a dangerous state from a design point, in that you're not allowing people to play how they want to play, and some armies are very specifically good at doing that thing. So unless they was offered another
But
option,
it
I
depends where
think
you
this,
set that maximum, doesn't it? Because
yeah,
if you set that maximum at 50, it's still a big unit, but it's not a unit of 80, is it? And
it
I
gets
think that's
broken.
probably what they're trying to do,
50 can
isn't
get
it?
broken.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's interesting. I think it's yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. I I don't mind it. I just don't think it's necessarily hitting the targets that they may have wanted it to. Which
Potentially not. I think that they're understanding that there is some skew size of units, and they're starting
mm,
to realize that it's people that's making a game again not be the game that they've designed, the pictures that they're putting in their books,
mm,
which so many people say they want to play. Um, so I think that yes, it might have not been the best way of dealing with it, but they're going to have to deal with it somewhere along the line, and
yeah.
that might have something to do with it. Anyway, and then the final thing, really quickly, is the Fanatics changes seemed quite good. I think it doesn't really make Fanatics awfully weak at all, but it just gives the agency to the opponents. It feels like they can actually do something about it. That would be my interpretation of it.
I don't know. I've got a funny take on this, and I've used Fanatics for a long time since they were basically introduced into the game.
Mm.
And I honestly think this is one of the biggest positives they have ever given Fanatics.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, yep, your opponent can now shoot at them, but if we're talking about an attritional board state where you have a unit of Thunderers that has all got to fire at the same target and they're, I don't know, 15 strong. So
Yeah.
what's that? 175 points or whatever. And they're firing at something that's 25 points and they can only target one of them.
Hmm.
Okay, you're winning that points race at getting across the table and getting stuck in.
But
So,
the point is the opponent has the agency. It's not. I think one of the worst feel bads in games is when something happens to you and there's nothing you can do about it. And that was one of the
mm,
things I always feel So it's still an option whether you target that fanatic. Of course, that's a tactical choice, isn't it? But
Yeah,
at least you've
I
got the
mean,
option now to do with it if you want to, rather than just because there will be situations where it is the right thing to do to target it, and you've got that agency, as I keep saying, versus times where it just happens. It's something that just happens to you, and that can feel bad, especially if they cause an awful lot of damage.
I do think as well that in the past, the tables that we used to play on certainly had a lot more scenery on rather than these.
Hmm.
I know that people say, oh, well, historically people pick their battle sites, yeah, but picking a battle site doesn't always mean that you just pick a valley, that's got massive
Yeah.
open ground in the middle. If you're fighting against a huge amount of troops that have got, numerical
Mm.
advantage over you, you pick bottlenecks and you pick places where you can channel them that they can only come at you through certain directions. And I do feel in the past that with the amount of scenery we used to have on tables, that fanatics were not quite so much of an issue then because they do random move and they just, 9 times out of 10, they're going to the side of a building or something, or a well, or a cart, or some
Yeah.
woods, and I think it's only when you have these vast spaces that it becomes a problem. It was a problem at the start of the expansion when you could fling your Night Goblin line out 27 inches, and then release them in your opponent's deployment area. That was an issue,
Yeah.
100%. But as soon as that stopped being done, yeah, as you say, you got the agency now to shoot them if you want, but for all of the people, just beware that thinking that shooting against the fanatics is a really great result for you because you're now in the position where in 2,000 points you can have 120 orc boys coming across the table at you with
Hmm.
furious charge. I'm sure you can do the maths and work out what's going to do
Oh,
the
sure.
most
Yeah.
damage.
Like I said, it's that choice now, isn't it?
Yeah, it
And
is,
that's good. And that's
and it
good.
is a choice. So at least you have that choice now, as you say. I just think that it's the Orcs and Goblin players are probably quietly in the same way that Vampire Counts and Tomb Guard have been doing for the majority of this first expansion, quietly rubbing their hands in the corner
Yeah. Yeah.
and muttering to themselves in, making nefarious pacts and everything. So, yeah, going to
Absolutely.
be interesting. Going to be interesting.
And I'm really brief. I think you're right on the terrain thing. I don't think they've got the terrain right on this edition.
No.
Yes, you want to maneuver your blocks, but then also you want to make sure. It's another way of making sure people don't take blocks of
Yeah,
80 is to make it really hard
exactly.
to maneuver. And I think there are terrain types that are missing. You could have small pieces of scatter style terrain that's
Mm,
maybe no more than 50 millimeter wide that they're not line of sight blocking because you realize that people are just moving around them, so you can target normally, but if you impact them, then they cause damage, and also you can't just march through them, which you don't need many. You could even say have your 6 bits of terrain, but also have 4 small pieces of terrain like rocks or something that aren't line of sight blocking, but you can't just pass through them. They can't count as
yeah,
impassable terrain. Real small bits, and it just means you've got to maneuver around them. It means tactically the game becomes about rank and flank and maneuver, and things
yeah,
like fanatics have got something they might run into or hit as well. I think it'll be really
yeah.
nice to see a bit more of that without taking away from the rest of it. And your tables look so much better as well with them on.
Yeah, scatter
But
terrain is brilliant. And you could go one further and say that your objective markers
mhm,
should be that, so that,
yeah,
it makes it difficult for you to get around them and
yeah,
things like that. All right, you can effectively hide behind them a little bit, but if you're 10 across, you're not going to
yeah.
be hiding from too much, are you? So yeah, certainly something interesting to think about. Let us know in the comments what you think. Is there enough terrain on tables for you, or would you like to see more? Or
Mhm,
do you think
for
that
sure.
really you always want to play on a fairly open battlefield? Because it is easier to play on a fairly open battlefield. There's no two ways about it. And I'm not knocking anybody who does because I understand that maneuvering these units is incredibly difficult. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. It's about getting that balance right, and I don't think they've
Yeah.
quite got it yet. Right then, so let's move on to our conclusions then, Mark.
Mm.
So, do you think we have FAQs too often? And then, and are they needed this often? I think we've already talked a little bit about whether these are good enough changes this time round. But so yeah, do we have this too often? Is this too much?
I think 6 monthly is great. I think that it's probably great for the majority of players. I think it is probably not great for competitive players. And ironically, I find myself in a position where before I was saying there's too much comp, we should try and reduce it because there is too much, to now being in the position where I'm actually saying to people, well, maybe it does just fall to, the tournament organisers and the likes of WTC and people like that to issue this is what we're going to be using at competitive events. These are the comp packs that we're going to be using, and then for everybody else to just not have to worry about that because they're not at a level of play where they're using those sort of walls. And by level of play, I don't mean skill wise. I mean they like playing with their friends and having a social game of it, as opposed to going out for a couple of tournament days, which obviously can be social as well. I'm not saying that, but I think there needs to be a clearer differentiation. So I think 6 monthly is great for the majority of people, but probably not great for tournament players.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think the nuance for me would be how much of it is an FAQ, a genuine FAQ, and how much of it is an errata. I think a 6 monthly FAQ is absolutely fine. And if it doesn't feel like there's been lots of wholesale changes each time that really changes the game, then I think that's absolutely fine. I can totally understand why competitive players want things fixed on a quarterly basis or even beforehand. I've seen people saying, look, if there's a problem like Cathay, I want to see it fixed within the month, and then I want to see the FAQ as well. And the reality is that GW don't have the data for that. All the data for 40k and for the Age of Sigmar, a lot of it is through their own events that they are running. For Old World is a completely different system game. There's a couple of writers doing this game. They don't have the time to, even if they're online and they can see what probably is the issue, but they can't react on the probables. They've got to react to a longer set of data. And when they've got the time to sit and review that data, because they're probably writing the next edition right now while trying to write the next 3 or 4 arcane journals and all the other things that they're trying to do. So I don't think it works for that reason. And for that reason, competitive players, and quite rightly so, have to find an answer. They need to look to their own comps to do that. I'm still a fan of having multiple comps out there and people use different things and you can pick what's best. And I also quite like the idea that someone like the WTC has a set of rulings that are try to be as clean as possible for these tricky matters. And try and lead on it, because there's a committee of people from all over the world getting to vote and talk about this. And there's some kind of consensus there. And then other players can choose to use them if they want to. And so this committee of ultra competitive players who want to play the game cleanly have decided to do this. I think it's a good idea. Do you want to play it that way? Yes or no? And the same for TOs, EOs can look at those kind of things. So I think there's room for everyone to do it, and they should go and make the changes. The game's always been about making the changes to make the game better, but as in thinking that Games Workshop should do more, but we shouldn't be hoping for erratas every 6 months. And I definitely don't want to feel like a balance update, because that means there's a problem. And I think some of the problems we've had, as we've already talked about, have been caused by tinkering. And there's been a lot of tinkering in this edition that was probably needed. But I'm concerned that we've fallen into this process now where this constant tinkering is always causing the next thing. And there will be something from this. In a few months' time, we'll be talking about how the Furious Charge changes have affected something else. Just like Press of Battle affected the stuff that meant that this needed to come along. And I worry that when we're doing that level of errata to the game mid-edition, that's a problem. The game's not in a good place. The changes should be FAQs, and stuff around helping the armies, much more forces of books focused. So the odd points
Yeah.
change, the odd special rule. I think that's a healthier place to be. So I hope moving forward there's less main rule book erratas, even if there are problems. We just might have to accept that that's it for the edition. Go back to the old days when we had a single FAQ for the edition that was dealing with typos. Was that optimal? No. But also we can see the opposite now, the opposite of this constant tinkering with the core of the game. We've got our 1.5 rulebook. Just accept that's probably it, and hope that the changes are more around the armies themselves now rather than the core rules, and we just get on with it. So it's not constantly changing. I think that would be preferable as
Yeah,
well. But I get both
would.
sides. I really do.
Yeah, I would like that as well. I understand it's a difficult situation, but like, it's not a huge team for people that are out there saying, well, they should do this, they should do that. It's not a huge team. It doesn't have a huge amount of resources that it can throw at these things. Every time you're taking people to try and use their resources to fix something that is so urgent it needs to be fixed now, in your opinion, it's taking them off of something that is further down the line, which then means that things get delayed and then they miss slots. And then we get into this position where, oh, well, that hasn't come out and it hasn't, or there's been nothing for a while for a bit. Just be mindful of what you wish for,
Yeah.
because everything does have a knock-on effect when there's a small team. They're doing a really, really, really good job. Yes, there's still some iffy wording on things that, could do with being tightened up. But on the whole, considering how big the team is, they're doing a fantastic job. We have got a fantastic game. It is very difficult to try and get it balanced. I don't think that you ever really will get it as balanced as it was at a point in the past. And I think once you accept that that's probably the case, then you'll find you can just have a lot more fun playing Warhammer. Than worrying about all of the, oh well, this doesn't work, and just have fun with it. Just play the game,
Yeah.
and if you're unsure, just come up with a rule between you. If you're not an event, and work around it. It doesn't have to be as super complicated as people have made it out to be. It really doesn't.
Yeah, I agree. Don't wish for an FAQ and errata to G up the meta or change the meta.
No.
That's not what they're designed to do. It's not a balance update. It's not a balance update. Anyway, right. So it's going to be a big packed show, Mark. So you've got 1 minute now. Oscar accepts a speech. Give your shout outs and then we'll get on to closing the show out.
Just all of the normal people, really. And to the community, really, I understand it's been a tricky time for everybody while we've been waiting for this to come along. It did come out of the blue a little bit because it sort of like came along and we was like, oh, we weren't expecting that then, but it's here. We've got it. Just got to make the best of it. I appreciate that it's not great for competitive players, but it is probably okay for the majority of people that play at local clubs and in social groups. So yeah, it's 6 1 half a dozen of the other. So yeah, just have fun with it, enjoy it.
Thank you, as always, everyone watching. We love you. Get involved in the comments below. Keep it friendly and respectful. It's just opinions. We're not, at the end of the day, we're all here for playing Warhammer and play Warhammer with like-minded people if you're able to, because that's what gives you the best Warhammer. Check out all the links in the description. Join the Discord for Miniature Realms, and then check out my Patreon as well. Channel memberships are there as well. The deal on Patreon is far better, but I know some people don't like to sign up for Patreon. So if you want to support me on the channel and all the stuff I do, those are the best ways of doing it. But thank you very much for watching. Take care, and we'll catch you soon.